Hey guys, Simon here, and I know this isn't an hour-long breakdown discussion on the Magic the Gathering lore, but it is something I think many of you will find interesting. It's a theory, a conspiracy theory regarding the very nature of planes in MTG. Now, you're probably all at least a little familiar with the so-called flat Earth theory, the idea that the Earth is in fact not spherical but flat, despite all the evidence to the contrary. Now, I don't want the comment section of this video to devolve into a debate about a flat Earth, so let's debate something more productive. Are the fake fantasy worlds of Magic the Gathering flat or spherical? What evidence do we have for either? And what do we know of planes and how they themselves exist in Magic the Gathering's multiverse? To learn how the creators of MTG's story and its worlds first envisioned planes, you'll have to take a ride on the Wayback Machine to the original post on Wizards.com called Planes of Existence, where it lays out what planes are exactly. From the post, quote, "The multiverse, a boundless expanse of worlds, each different from the last. These worlds, called planes, differ as widely as the imagination. One plane might be covered entirely in dense jungle, for example. On another, city has replaced nature entirely. Still others are volcanic, icy, barren, or more like our own world, with many varied elements. Only one thing unites all the planes of the multiverse: mana, the energy that fuels magic. Mana infuses the land, and only those with a connection to the land can call upon its mana. Some planes are far richer in mana than others. On those planes, magic is powerful and commonplace. Elsewhere, where mana is scarce, magic is rare. Average beings have no idea that planes exist beyond their own. They live their lives believing their world is the only world. Their perception is limited by the scope of their experience, cut off from the rest of the multiverse. Only planeswalkers know the greater truth, that each plane is but one of many, and that only they can travel the planes beyond their own. All planes are connected by the substance of the multiverse itself, the ether, called the blind eternities by planeswalkers, the only beings who ever see it. In this chaotic, surreal expanse of uncontained energy and matter, time, distance, and the senses have little meaning. The vastness of the multiverse and the wonders it holds, that is what unites all planeswalkers, what drives them forth through the blind eternities and into planes beyond their own." End quote. Now, this is a great description of planes in general, but we're given even more information from characters from within the story. Planeswalkers like Nicol Bolas, for example, well, he was able to carve out his own pocket dimension, his own plane called the Meditation Realm. The artificial planeswalker Karn created his own world called Argentum, later known as Mirrodin and then New Phyrexia. Yawgmoth, god of the Phyrexians, even created his own plane of Wrath. And who could forget Serra's Realm, a pocket plane home to Serra's angels? The point being that planes aren't just planets that exist in the same universe as one another. They're blocked off, separated dimensions with rules and laws of nature unique to those realms. While some may think of planes as planets, which technically they are, they're more like different dimensions. You can't just fly up into what looks like space and reach Theros from Ravnica, for example. No goblin-fueled rocket is going to fly you from the Blind Eternities to Coldheim. Those beings or vessels, some like the Weatherlight that really do look like spaceships, that have managed to travel to different planes, aren't shot up and travel along a linear path to another plane. They're fueled by the magic of a planeswalker or something similar that allows them to pierce through their own pocket dimension and into another. So the space you see in the night sky of a world like Theros, with its many stars, all of it belongs to Theros and Theros alone. Within the constellations of the gods, you won't find Dominaria or Ixalan, just the stars that exist within the realm of Theros. Truly, each plane is a universe in and of itself. So if we circle back to those outstanding mages who in the past created their own pocket planes, the Bolases, Karns, and Yawgmoths of the multiverse, you'll see that they didn't just make a planet. Their extensive godlike powers afforded to them by their planeswalker sparks allowed them to make their own universes. While this is a feat no longer achievable in Magic the Gathering since Planeswalkers were nerfed by the mending, it's still a lasting reminder of how the multiverse is laid out and what planes actually are. Oh, and I just want to make a quick note about how powerful Yawgmoth and the Phyrexians are by saying not only did they create their own universe in Wrath, but they also implemented a way to planeswalk that entire universe over top that of Dominaria. This was known as the Wrathy Overlay, the Phyrexians' grand plan to invade Dominaria by literally transporting the landmass of Wrath over top Dominaria. While one could argue that this only worked on a small portion of the physical world of Wrath, rather than the entire universe of that pocket dimension, there isn't enough out there to know for sure that if at some point in the story, two universes overlapped. Another great example of how planes can interact throughout the multiverse is the curious case of Alara. Alara itself was once a large plane that, like many others, encapsulated the 5 key colors of mana. But an apocalyptic event in the plane's past shattered the world itself and created 5 independent shards. Now, thinking logically, you blow up a planet into pieces. The pieces may be separated, but they're still a part of the same space. You would, maybe, see them floating off on the horizon, not attached, but still occupying that same reality. However, in the case of Alara, this is shown to be false. When the shards formed, they broke off and created their own pocket dimensions. They became planes in and of themselves. They didn't tie to one another. No one looked up into the night sky of Naya and saw a band floating about. In fact, the residents of Jund, for example, lost all knowledge of the other shards completely. And this happened to each of the shards. So for all intents and purposes, with no way to traverse the shards aside from planeswalking and portal magic, the shards became their own plane dimensions. This leads us to believe that the physical landmass of a plane, in this case Alara, is somehow fundamentally tied to the space and laws of nature that surrounds it. If that landmass is broken and fractures off, the universe surrounding it too fractures and separates. This could mean the focal point of planes are the planes themselves, meaning that the mana likely flows from the central landmass. Take Theros again as an example. We see thousands of stars in the night sky of Theros. Does this mean there could be habitable planets out there? Well, if Alara is used as the standard and the plane becomes unstable once the primary landmass is altered, then it would suggest that basically only Theros matters. Only Theros has mana flowing through it, and possibly only that land could support life. Or perhaps the example of Alara only follows that plane's set of natural laws and physics, which other planes don't have to abide to. Really, we don't know because there is no standardization with how planes can or do function. But given the evidence we have, I don't think you'll be seeing any extraterrestrial landings on Zendikar or any other plane anytime soon. Now that we understand a little more about what planes and the multiverse actually are, let's get into the great debate itself. Are planes spherical or flat? Luckily, we do have an official answer right from the source of MTG world building on this exact question. Quote, "Most planes are spheres with an atmosphere and one or more suns or moons. They resemble planets. But there is no law of physics common to all planes of the multiverse. Planes can be infinite expanses of matter, tiny specks of empty space, or logic-defying inversions of normal reality. A plane can contain an entire sprawling universe, or nothing at all." So, there you go. Planes are spheres. End of discussion. See you later, folks. Hold up though. That source says most planes are spherical, and it also notes that two planes don't always share similar laws of physics. So the verdict isn't in quite yet. While some worlds like Dominaria may be spherical in nature, as shown in a cinematic by Wizards of the Coast themselves, others may not be. They could be flat. Since there is no uniform design for planes and their universes, who's to say one can't have a flat landmass? I know. That seems like a, well, prove me wrong sort of statement. Since we cannot find evidence against it, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to exist. So right now, do we have an example of a flat plane? So now that we know that theoretically a flat plane can exist, let's explore if they already do. When attempting to locate the coveted flat planes of the multiverse, we must stick to noted examples of astrological trackings that have taken place. That being any world where there is an emphasis placed on the movements of astral bodies like the sun or suns, moon, and stars. By tracking these, we can calculate if a plane experiences normal day-night cycles. If a plane is spherical, day and night should occur in different places at different times, as the plane rotates around these astral bodies. If not, and the plane is flat, the entirety of the plane will only experience day or night. This can obviously be hard to track from a story perspective because, for the most part, we only learn about a world's story through its characters, who do not share the perspective of the entire plane. You won't see in the descriptions anything blatant like, Teferi sees the setting sun, then planeswalks to the other side of Dominaria, on which the sun is rising. That just doesn't exist. So let's take the creative writing team's quoted descriptions of most planes being spherical at face value, and assume that this is true. This means we just need to find planes who blatantly describe a world that doesn't follow traditional astronomical trends. And with that in mind, we come up with two possible planes, Lorwyn and Innistrad. Lorwyn and Innistrad differ because day and night aren't just natural occurrences that most denizens pay little attention to. They're major events that shape the world itself. So with this high emphasis, we get a better understanding of their day-night cycles, and they begin to show an interesting phenomenon. For Lorwyn, when the sun sets, the plane's magic changes and it becomes Shadowmoor. This occurrence itself is fairly misunderstood, and we don't know a whole lot about how it actually works. But from the story, it's pretty clear that Lorwyn transforms into Shadowmoor at night. If Lorwyn is spherical and the sun rotates in the sky, that would suggest the plane experiences both transformations simultaneously in different areas. As one side of the globe becomes Shadowmoor, the other becomes Lorwyn, and vice versa. This example gets even more extreme when you explore the story set on this plane. When the fairy queen Una messes with the natural occurrence and stretches day to last hundreds of years. That would mean if Lorwyn is spherical, the other side would be Shadowmoor for that same stretch of time. But this apparently isn't the case. The entire world is described to go through this transformation together. There are no examples of regions or peoples who don't experience the power of the Great Aurora. Since this seems to be a total change, there can only be one blanketed side of Lorwyn under the sky, suggesting that this plane is in fact flat. Our second example is the world of Innistrad, who right now in the current story is experiencing a similar phenomenon as Lorwyn. With Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow, the plane appears to be locked in a state of perpetual night. The moon has risen high and the sun refuses to return, which begs the question, what's happening on the opposite side of what we know to be Innistrad? Innistrad is a great world to explore this flat plane theory because it's so dominated by the cycle of night and day. During the day, people are happy and content, but at night, they're not because, well, they usually die. Night and the power of the plane's moon enhances the plane's more nocturnal denizens, which tend to terrorize humanity. So special importance is placed on when and how long each night actually lasts. But just like Lorwyn, you never once hear reports of those on the other side of the plane, and with eternal night approaching, wouldn't that mean eternal day someplace else on Innistrad? Much like Lorwyn, Innistrad has no accounts of the day-night cycle differing in other places of the plane. This is given even more credence as there are people on Innistrad who literally devote their entire lives to studying the movements of the plane's moon. Native-born astromancers have written countless reports of this astral body, and even a planeswalker, Tamiyo, came to investigate the nocturnal occurrence. Maybe native beings could have missed the sun rising in different places, but a planeswalker, they have no excuse missing such a crucial fact, especially when they came to study this particular field. Yet still, Tamiyo and all these researchers don't mention anything about the opposite side of Innistrad. This again suggests that the same astral body appears above all of Innistrad at the same time. This can only be possible if the plane is flat, or there's still places unexplored on Innistrad by either mortals or planeswalkers. The same man who gave us our previous quote describing how planes are planet-shaped spheres, well, his name is Brady Domermuth, and he was the lead designer for Magic the Gathering's creative team early on in MTG's history. Before leaving that position in 2013, Brady went on to describe how they tackle world building, designing planes, and the multiverse at large, laying the groundwork for what we discussed in this video and how it operates in the lore today. Still, while at first laying out how most planes are spheres, Brady was also approached with a similar conspiracy theory in a community post on March 13th of 2012. When asked about the world of Innistrad, which to the player base seemed a far deal smaller than other worlds from a lore perspective, Brady had this to say, quote, "In the case of Innistrad in particular, you're right that it seems a smaller plane than most. The 4 provinces, Gavany, Nephalia, Kessig, and Stesnia, all exist on one landmass. And even though that landmass is sizable with many rivers, mountain ranges, forests, and moors, it's tempting to wonder what's beyond the horizon. When the humans of Innistrad look out to sea, however, they see a wall of mist beyond which lies the Nebelgast, a tide of geists no ship has ever been known to survive. Innistrad's galleons can venture out into the thinnest of these mists at low tide and skirt the shore from a set distance. But captains retreat to land before high tide, lest they fall prey to the legions of Mari, spirits of the drowned, and Niblis, frostgeists. With demons and devils emerging from deep below Innistrad's surface, we clearly haven't yet seen every place on Innistrad. Until the Nebelgast is lifted though, Innistrad's habitable space is bound on all sides. Innistrad's shape may still be up for debate. It's either a flat world that experiences day and night independently, or it's spherical, with its lands locked by otherworldly magic. Which do you think is the truth? So, like everything in fantasy writing, there isn't a perfect explanation. The idea, born in the oldest conceptions of Magic the Gathering world building, is that these pocket dimensions, these separated universes, can be governed by all sorts of crazy laws and physics. That leaves the door wide open for a flat plane, square plane, heart-shaped plane, you name it. Though most may be spherical in nature, those nutjobs out there preaching the evidence of flat worlds in MTG, well, they may not be as nutty as we thought. Thanks for watching the video, everyone. I know you're all excited for my next long-form lore discussion video, so please let me know what topic you'd like to see covered in the comment section below. And I want to give a special shout out to a fan of the channel, Daniel Von Ginkel, who inspired this video on the flat plane theory. If you enjoyed this video and want to help support the channel's growth, consider leaving a comment, a like, becoming a subscriber, and sharing the video. Sharing the video's link on MTG's subreddit is the absolute best way to spread and grow this community. As always guys, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, see ya!